Hello and welcome to Media Week. Ahead on the program, Nine Entertainment sells its Nine Live events business, plus incredible changes in radio as the newly merged Macquarie Radio kicks into gear. But first, Australia's four largest newspaper publishers have come together to launch an industry-wide positioning and brand campaign that demonstrates the influence of newspaper media and restates to advertisers just why newspapers get results. The campaign is the largest marketing initiative ever undertaken by the newspaper works. To tell us about the campaign and to talk about the sector's challenges, APN News and Media Chief Executive Michael Miller joins us now in the studio, and of course our co-host, editor and publisher of Media Week, James Manning. Welcome to the show, Mr. Miller. Tell us a bit about the new positioning, because this is the new positioning for the newspaper media, and the campaign is called Influential by Nature. What sort of examples are you using to suggest that the power that the medium still has?
The campaign has a number of phases, and the first one's really talking about the consumer connection and the influence it has on consumers in terms of changing either consumer behaviour, changing government policy. Kicked off this week with a campaign really focusing on the impact of violence on the streets in Sydney, a campaign that was run both by the Daily Telegraph and the Sydney Morning Herald. And a year on from that campaign, we've seen changes in lockout rules and equally a big change in consumer behaviour. And as a result, violence on the streets has reduced by 40%.
And is the campaign based around the print versions of these papers?
No, we talk about newspaper media and the brands across all platforms. And that particularly there's a campaign about a hit and run accident in WA. And it was really the petition grew out of social media, driven by the West Australian. And that the impact that had on so it's driver behaviour, again, in WA, and the penalties for hit and run accidents was really driven by newspaper media in the influence, and that's been an inherent benefit of newspaper media across all platforms, not just in recent years, but from their inception.
Michael, do you think your competitors in news spaces in other media will agree that newspapers are still the force they used to be? I mean, they used to drive the news agenda a lot. You know, they'd be referred to on breakfast radio. They'd set the news agenda often for the evening news later that day. Does that still happen?
It does still happen, and it only doesn't happen just in the mornings anymore. It happens throughout the day as news breaks, and often it's the newspaper media brands that are the point, either tweeting or posting or referring to that. And it's not just the other media that refer back to newspaper brands as being the reference point for verification, and it's also consumers. That when a major news breaks, they do turn to the newspaper brands they're familiar with and trust and have grown up with. And more often than that, and the recent Emma data, as well as the Nielsen data, shows that is that the newspaper brands, whether it be the Herald, whether it be the Telegraph or the Herald Sun, as being the leaders in news provision, it's those brands that people do turn to digitally, not just in print.
So the big question here is, how hard is it to get the four members of Newspaper Works together? I mean, two of them were in a pretty fierce brawl just last week.
That competition probably won't change, and it does make interesting conversation. But I think it's a recognition that all media companies and all industry bodies, that this is about category share, not just around individual media company share, and that maybe print as a category and has been late on the uptake on that, and that we have definitely seen, particularly from national advertisers, challenged market share, and in addressing that collectively, I think that's what our competitors have been doing maybe for a bit longer, and so in some ways we're playing catch up, but also I think re-educating many media buyers, and this is ultimately focused at advertising decisions. It was, I think, recognition. I think once we saw the campaign, it didn't take long to agree that is what our point of difference is, and that was what will be why every campaign needs influencers. And that's from a commercial point of view, and newspaper media has a major role in influencing outcomes, not just within the readership of newspapers, but other media.
We've been seeing some examples on screen of the creative. It looks very powerful. That message, I guess, has been carried in all your members' publications. Tell us about that. Have you got any funding to put it outside of that, so maybe people who are missing out on newspapers at present? Yeah,
it will be definitely across business press, trade press, and not just in print, but also across the electronic mediums that those media brands have. We often tell our clients and agencies that they need to maintain marketing, to maintain brand and emotional connection. Rational reasons to purchase, and that maybe we as an industry have not followed through. We haven't walked the talk, and this is. I hope it's an ongoing campaign that will evolve to phase 2, being more commercially oriented. But I hope it's an ongoing campaign as we tell our clients to do.
It comes in a week where we're seeing digital readers continue to grow, whereas print continues to slide. Is this a trend that you expect to continue going? We've seen definitely some change in print readership, but definitely that audience issue is not as great as maybe perceived. You've still got, in terms of the newspaper category, 70% of Australians reading a printed version every week. And that's not just paid, it's also community. And it's a category that receives 20% of the ad spend. It's not that it doesn't still have relevance within both consumers and advertisers. I think publishers have also identified that the platform shouldn't drive the message. It's the message itself that we need to publish first. And I think that's also reflective of not holding back in terms of news. It's getting it out there and getting it to the audience as they expect it to.
A lot of the ad industry guests we get on Sky News Business, we talk to them about newspapers, and they always seem quite supportive of the sector, and they say, yeah, look, it's still got a lot to offer advertisers, but then we've talked about the disconnect. They don't seem to follow through, with that support. Campaigns like this, something that'll help, a bit more direct action, perhaps.
Yeah, the campaign is in part also an education campaign, and it concerns me, and probably part angers me as well, that we have to. There are media, and there are agencies, not just media agencies, but agencies that tell us that their teams don't actually understand print. They don't read newspapers. They don't understand. And for a category that receives 20% of the main media spend, to employ people that don't understand that medium, to me is something missing the point. And we're trying to address that. We accept that there are people out there that maybe don't understand print and print media brands, and this campaign is going some of the way to addressing that. The campaign itself is only part of the solution. It's followed through from the publishers. It's the Emma data. It's the case studies that we have plenty of.
Just interesting on that, because even though you have plenty of digital-only ad options, do you find some advertisers still link news and news brands with print properties?
They do, and that, I think, in many ways is, particularly if the campaign's topical, it's something which they does resonate with them, and so I think they benefit from that. I think that in terms of digitally, the audience levels of those campaigns are well understood, and I think importantly what the Emma data has done is not just talk through audience levels, it's talked through engagement and results, and that's really the feedback we get from advertisers. It's results oriented rather than not just the amount of audience you've got.
So I'm never quite sure when we talk about newspapers how much we should be talking about print, or it's just a big general offering now. But tell us, what are the pockets that are working well in terms of advertising? Is it upmarkets doing better maybe than tabloid, or metros doing better than regional? Are there sort of areas that are stronger?
In terms of audience, the changes as per the past week, you'd see that the broadsheet and business part of the market has seen less loss in print, made up some by the increases in digital subscriptions. But in terms of advertising, at 20% of the market, I think we've got 49 of Australia's top 50 advertisers using print. So it's not as if we're not attracting people to the medium, it's the levels of which we need to fight for some market share. Definitely finance, if you look at the SMI figures yesterday, was challenged. Retail as well, and there have been two big supporters previously in print, and as an industry group, those two have seen decreases. You are seeing increases in motoring, in liquor. You're seeing travel, education, real estate has been categories that you've actually seen some growth in, and I am optimistic that some of the categories that have tailed out of print, we're seeing the bottoming out, and the investment's gone by publishers into some of the growth categories are starting to stick.
Just finally, in terms of revenue, how does advertising income rank? I mean, will there always be a mix of subscription revenue and also ad dollars?
There will always be a mix,
yep.
But the balance is definitely turning towards more consumer or circulation revenue, and it's not just print circulation. The New York Times announced last year they're now getting more revenue from their audience than they are from advertising, and a lot of the financial markets have seen that as being a positive, having de-risked their advertising exposure. And I think that you're going to see Australian newspapers follow that trend as well.
All right, Michael, always good to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us today. Michael Miller there, Chief Executive of APN News and Media. Well, let's take a check now on the media sector's performance on the share market this week. And Nine Entertainment is selling its Nine Live business to Affinity Equity Partners for $640 million, which includes ticketing business Ticketek. We're joined now by Evan Lucas from IG for more. Evan, great to have your company on the show. Shareholders have responded pretty well to this. What does it mean for Nine Entertainment?
Yeah, they certainly have responded very well. On the day, they obviously sell themselves up around about 5.5%. So it certainly was taken very, very well by shareholders when this dropped. You've got to look at the reason why it was so important to shareholders to see it. It's actually a very, very good price. David Gyngell openly admitted that he wasn't looking to actually sell Nine Live. It was doing relatively nice in terms of the bolt-on inside their division. They reported $36 million of earnings in the February numbers. Now, if you equate that to what we saw in the price, and the enterprise price ended up coming in at $640 million, that's 17.7 times on that earnings. So that's a very nice premium. It's why he's obviously said, yes, we'll definitely sell that business, and it will come back in the form of share buybacks and a dividend. So that's why we saw that really good upside when the news dropped, and it is a very good deal for Nine and also for Nine shareholders.
A new boss for Seven Group, Evan, as well this week in the media space. What's been the reaction there?
Yeah, Ryan Stokes, obviously the son of Kerry Stokes, takes over. There was some that may have accused them of nepotism, but that I think is very unfair. Ryan Stokes has certainly done his apprenticeship. He has been part of Seven Group, Seven West Media for 15 years, and he has certainly done most of the role. He was COO before this announcement to take over as CEO at Seven Group. He is also on the board of Seven West Media. He's going to have a tough time, let's be honest. Here we've got, the Westtrac assets that are seeing a little bit of downside considering the mining space is starting to decline, and also the Seven West side is still grappling with how they're going to continue to move advertising. So it is obviously a move in that family. It will be probably seen as a good thing on the longer term, but he's got a lot of work to do in that Seven Group as they try and continue to really stabilise a business that's seeing pressure from both sides.
All right, Evan, always good to get your analysis. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ingrid.
Evan Lucas there from IG with the latest in the media space. For more on all that, let's return to James Manning now. James, what do you make of Ryan Stokes' new position?
It was like Evan said, I think he's done a good apprenticeship, 15 years. It's more than you get. I think because he's a family member, he's had to do it,
right.
Probably a bit tougher.
His whole life.
Yeah. So yep. he's got insights that just an employee probably wouldn't get, but he's had to do it a lot longer too than an outsider might have had to do. So he's really learnt the business top to bottom. And as someone else pointed out this week, he's got key people in the different companies that make up the overall group, making probably most of those big decisions. So I think it'll be all right. And it says something interesting too, I guess, about the succession, from Kerry Stokes. This looks like it's going to be it, although both Ryan and Kerry said this week, look, he's not going anywhere just yet, but you've got to think that's going to be the plan for when he decides to step back from the business. Yeah,
for sure. And also Nine, we were hearing from Evan then as well, Nine's decision to sell off its Nine Live business. What do you make of this move? Yeah,
look, it's a great result for Nine and hopefully a great result for Affinity Equity, who are taking it over. Jeff Jones and the team at Nine Live must have been able to do a good sell on the potential upside there, because the equity partners will want to move on after a few years, and they're taking the Nine Live business into a lot of new areas. So there's going to be good upside there that they think they can get even a better multiple than what they paid for the company when they want to get out.
All right. Well, we do have to take a quick break on Media Week. Coming up next, TV ratings for week 15, plus television chiefs again meeting with the Prime Minister in Canberra. Media law is not the only thing on the agenda. We'll bring you details next.